the amount of knowledge, that real life knowledge that they have got, you're never going to get that in a textbook.
The thought of kind of jumping into a full-time job straight away, I would have been absolutely clueless. The modern apprenticeship, it was massive. It helped me a lot.
Hello and welcome to Scotland Matters, the podcast from Scottish Land and Estates. I'm Cameron Gillies, Head of External Affairs here at Scottish Land and Estates, and today we are looking at a subject that goes straight to the heart of rural Scotland's future: skills, opportunity, and the next generation of people who will help shape our countryside. Across the rural sector, from forestry and land management to farming, conservation, housing, tourism, and renewable energy, we know that businesses and communities are facing a growing challenge to secure the skills and workforce required to meet Scotland's needs. There are jobs to be done, careers to be built, and opportunities to be seized, but we need to make sure people know those opportunities exist and that there are practical routes into them. One of the most important routes to that is through apprenticeships. So for young people thinking about their next steps after school or college or university, or for anyone looking for a more hands-on, purposeful career, apprenticeships can offer a way to earn, learn and build real experience in sectors that are essential to Scotland's economy and our environment and rural communities. This episode is going to take on a slightly different format because our guests today all have very busy lives. And my colleague Nic MacLeod, SLE's Policy and Public Affairs Advisor, has already sat down with Emma Staniforth, who coordinates apprenticeship programmes at Forestry and Land Scotland, to discuss how these schemes work, what they offer and how they can help address the skills shortages facing the rural sector. You'll hear that conversation shortly. After that, I'll be joined by Murray Henderson, who recently graduated from apprenticeship training with Forestry and Land Scotland and is now working with them full-time, to hear firsthand what attracted him into the sector, what the experience of an apprenticeship with Forestry and Land Scotland was like, and what advice he would give to others considering a similar path. Here's Nic with her conversation with Emma.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity for the modern apprentices that are coming in to work with you guys. Could you, outline from a kind of organisational perspective from FLS, what the main benefits of a modern apprenticeship are for you guys?
Oh, for sure. I think the biggest benefit that we see is sort of future-proofing our workforce, future-proofing our industry. We have an ageing demographic in forestry, so making sure that we're bringing new generations in to carry on in how we need to carry on. So not only teaching somebody new to come in and do the job that we need them to do today and tomorrow, but thinking, well, what do we need this person to be able to do in the next sort of 3, 4, 5 years? And bringing in that new idea, new perspective, a new thought process into looking at how we do stuff, which is amazing for us. And also, upskilling an individual by getting them to spend time with somebody that's been in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years. We've still got a workforce here that's been here for 40 years plus. So the amount of knowledge, that real life knowledge that they have got, you're never going to get that in a textbook. So for them to be able to pass that on to a new individual, that really motivates them in that sort of latter stages of their career. And also they get to pass that on. So for us, we're not getting that brain drain. We're being able to pass on these skills and knowledge and real life experiences in real time for an individual. And also that retention piece. We've really found that if we put investment into Modern Apprentice in their apprenticeship programme, that 80 to 90% of them stay with us as a business. And if they don't stay with us as a business, they definitely stay within the industry. So we're training people not only to work for Forestry and Land Scotland, we're training them to go out and work as potential contractors that come back onto our site. So they know what we need, they know what our expectations are, and we've trained them. We can mould somebody into what we need them to be. I think they're the two biggest benefits that we get from bringing apprentices in.
I think that retention piece is really important, and the kind of loss of skills on the horizon of the kind of land-based sectors as a whole is, really a major concern across the full sector. So amazing to hear that retention of knowledge is really staying within the sector as well. That's great to hear that you're using that opportunity. I mean, as a host organisation for modern apprenticeships, I mean, what are the main challenges or limitations for delivering modern apprenticeships effectively?
I think going back to that recruitment piece is making sure that message is right from the beginning, making sure that the business and staff are taking apprentices on for the right reasons. They're not here just because we need an extra pair of hands to do something. You know, apprentices have always had a bit of a bad rep, you know, in the sense of, make the tea and brush the floor. That's not what we do here. We have to make sure that this apprentice is coming in for the right reasons. So I think the biggest challenge is getting staff to understand that from the very off, you know, from the very beginning, to understand the purpose of an apprenticeship programme, and that an individual is coming in with limited or no skills and no experience in the world of work. Or they could be a career changer that's coming in from a different perspective. So we've got different challenges. So making sure that staff have got time and a workload that allows them to spend time with an apprentice properly, and give them that support from the very beginning has been a big challenge. I think if we've got that wrong at the beginning, it makes their apprenticeship programme difficult for everybody. When we've got it right, their journey is brilliant, and that's the retention that we then see because they've had a great experience with us. So I think that's one of the main challenges, is getting the messaging right. One of the other challenges is making sure that the training providers and the assessors understand what our expectation is as a business, what we need from that future workforce, so that the assessor, you know, a really good assessor, a really good person full of knowledge, can pass that on and make sure that the apprentice is seeing that as well, and having that link between the two, because you can't just do it on your own. You know, you could bring somebody in and you could be training them on certain things, but it's not quite what they need for that professionally recognised qualification that they're meant to be getting. So it's just making sure that there's time and resources to be able to put into an apprentice right at the beginning. You know, it kind of pays off for itself after a couple of months, but right at the beginning, that's usually the biggest challenge.
It's interesting that you mentioned that kind of future-proofing of your workforce. I mean, how do you think that modern apprenticeships will contribute to shaping the future workforce in Scotland?
Oh, I think they've got a huge role to play. I think apprenticeships have been going on forever, for years and years, you know, many, many years. And I think it's the way forward for a lot of businesses, because you're bringing somebody into a workforce who you can train them in real time. You know, you're really giving somebody that experience and that opportunity to get into that industry. You know, they're not having to come with qualifications prior. You will give them those qualifications. So you're training them into the areas that you need them to be trained in. You know, it's quite specific what you're going to give them, whether it's from engineering or from civil engineering, or, you know, in forestry or game and wildlife or admin, procurement, finance. You're training them into what your business and what your industry needs to be able to continue into the future. You know, we've lost that skill because apprenticeships they've kind of drifted off. They're coming back now, but you're not getting that experience in college and university sometimes. You know, you're getting the academic side of it, which is brilliant. You know, that can really help to get that professionally recognised qualification. But that real-time experience is what people need. And I think that is what the future workforce of Scotland needs as well. It's putting people out there in rural businesses to keep things ticking over. You know, AI can do a lot of jobs, but can AI actually build a fence? Can it go out and shoot deer off the land? Can it go and cut a tree down? You know, can it do the smaller things that people need to be actually skilled and trained to go and do? And if we continue to lose that in Scotland, if we don't have modern apprenticeships, how are people going to get in? How are people going to see what is out there, give it a go, and get paid for that? You know, an apprenticeship is an amazing opportunity for someone to get paid, to learn, to make the mistakes, to get tickets. Mm-hmm. You know, people go to university and come out with thousands of pounds worth of debt. You know, people are coming and getting jobs just because they need to pay the debt off. Well, as an apprentice, you haven't got debt. You've been paid to do it, whether that's as a modern apprentice or a graduate apprentice. You know, they're really attractive to people these days as well. So I think, you know, in terms of that future workforce, you're really upskilling people, and you can go anywhere with that. You don't just have to stay in that one industry. It's transferable skills. It's life skills. People can deal with life, not just, oh, well, a textbook tells me how to do it. So, well, that's not really giving you that real life experience. Textbook, go out and do it.
If you look ahead at the future of the modern apprenticeship scheme, what changes or improvements would you like to see to ensure that modern apprenticeships continue to deliver benefits not only for apprentices, but also employers like Forestry and Land Scotland and Scotland's future workforce?
I think one of the big changes that needs to happen is, we mentioned it just before, is the funding. I hate to sort of think, it always comes down to money, but for some employers, it is the funding to be able to do it. I think there's things happening. I think funding is being re-looked at by SDS, but I think more investment needs to be put into it. You've got big organisations paying into the apprenticeship levy, but how many of those organisations have actually taken apprentices on? Because the access to that funding is difficult. So I think that's a big thing, is the funding and the contribution rates, especially in some of the rural areas, or some of the rural skills and industries that need that. And then I think making sure that we have got the training providers, we have got the skilled assessors out there, these people that have been doing their job for sort of 10, 20, 30 years, that they are putting something back in, they're passing on their skills. To have an assessor who understands the industry, understands a new person coming into it, is vital. If you don't have a good assessor, it's really difficult to make that link between what an apprentice is trying to do. So I think that's vital. That's really important. More investment going into assessors. And I'm not just saying assessors from higher education. Assessors within businesses, it'd be amazing if more businesses became their own training providers, their own training centres. I know that's a difficult journey for some people to go on as a business, but if you could do that more, you would have direct access to an assessor straight away. You wouldn't have to wait for a college to be able to provide somebody to come out to you, But yeah, and sort of spreading that word of apprenticeships, that is a viable option for people to go into, whether it's a young person coming out of school or it's a career changer. We've all done jobs where you're sort of like, oh, I took this job and I've ended up in this career just because that's what's, they're the steps that I've taken. But for somebody that may be sitting at, 25, 30 or even 45 years old that may think, I'm sick of this career, I want to change, doing a modern apprenticeship is an acceptable way to do it. Get that messaging out there is one of the big changes as well. That it's a good, viable option. Schools and teachers are looking at modern apprenticeships in the same way that they put value on going to university and getting an education. A modern apprenticeship is like you're paid to train, you're paid to learn. Sell these modern apprenticeships out there. Give everybody that opportunity to get some real life experience. I think I think those three things are the biggest sort of things that need to be sort of tackled moving forward. Is the funding, the assessors, and that messaging around modern apprenticeships.
So, Murray, I want to just set the scene here and start out with a couple of basic questions about the apprenticeship scheme. The first one I wanted to ask was, what attracted you to the modern apprenticeship route in the first place?
So for me, it was about doing a kind of hands-on job and something where I could learn on site. I've always been a person who's got outdoors, been really active, been really sporty, and I don't really like the idea of sitting behind the computer screen and learning about it all and then going applying them skills after I'd maybe spent a year in uni or college or whatever. I quite like the idea of learning what I'm meant to do on the job and doing it on site. I love the idea of how active this apprenticeship was, getting outside, working with wildlife. It's always something that's applied to me. I grew up on a farm and I used to do a lot of work on a farm as well. And I would also say just learning something new. I've nobody in my family who has had past with working with wildlife or deer, apart from obviously the farm, as I mentioned. So it was about learning something new, getting out, doing something active, and just being eager to learn about it, really.
Yeah, when you're at school and you're thinking about your kind of next steps, were a lot of your mates kind of in a similar boat? Did they like the idea of doing something hands-on and being outdoors? And what made you sort of choose that path whilst others might have gone down a different path?
Yeah, definitely. The people that I've always kind of surrounded myself with are people who are very active and like doing things hands-on and like doing things themselves and things like that. So, as you said, yeah, a lot of my friends went down a different path. It was all kind of it seemed to be the kind of norm to do the trade route. So I know a lot of friends who went into construction and plumbing and electrician and things like that. But this was it was totally random. Actually, it was something that I seen advertised online on Facebook. Actually, I seen the job advertised on Facebook, and I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? I want to learn something new. I like wildlife, so I'll apply for this. And actually, in my head at the time, what I was thinking was, if I don't get the job, I've done an interview and I've got experience in that as well. So obviously went and done the interview process and absolutely loved learning about it at the interview, and I was really, really hoping that I had got the job, and luckily I had. And ever since, I've just I've not looked back. I've absolutely loved every day of it.
It's such a good attitude to take into things, and I think that comes through just in your sort of opening salvo there. You're so enthusiastic about it, which is great to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
When you were sort of thinking about applying for it in the first place, did you have any kind of preconceptions or expectations about what the job would really be like, and how did those compare with the reality of it?
I would say that, as I said before, I was really hoping that it would be the idea of learning on site rather as going to, a college for a year and sitting behind the computer and learning all about it and then going into the field. I was hoping as it was. So I was pleasantly surprised with that it was all on site, and I was learning with a mentor that I went out with who would teach me everything on site, and I would do it day by day out in the field, which I absolutely loved. One thing that I definitely didn't expect, which wasn't a bad thing at all, was how being a wildlife ranger, I would say, is less of a job and more of a lifestyle, because it's not just your average 9 to 5, you clock in at work at 9 and you finish at 5 and you can go home and do whatever you want at night, because you're kind of relying on deer behaviour to go out and do your job.
Yeah.
So, the deer are quite notorious for coming out at first light and coming out at last light. So you're kind of going out at whenever the sun comes up and whenever the sun goes down. So you just have to accustom your life to doing the job. And once you kind of really sink your teeth into it, I wouldn't look back now, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Nic, do you think that's something that the rural sector kind of finds challenging? It is a lifestyle, isn't it? It's not just a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out kind of career, is it?
No, and I think that spans not just only the sort of hands-on career, but also something like that policy aspect of it when legislation changes and comes in at all hours of the day. So I think what's really important is, and you're just hearing it now, and what Murray is saying, that the passion for that, and I think having a passion for the sector or the industry that you work in, any of the land-based sectors, you have to have that, to sort of have that drive to go to work every day, to really deliver. And to do, those longer hours, depending on the season and depending on what you do.
Yeah, I think that season thing is really important as well, isn't it? Because what you're doing in January and February is so different to what you end up doing in summer. But if I could ask Murray, if you could just describe a typical day during your apprenticeship. It might be that there's sort of several different ways to do that. So what would a typical day in spring be like, for example, for you?
So in spring is the kind of typical time for the deer to be breeding. So we kind of work around shooting seasons. So it'll be the beginning of April to roughly around October, September time. There's no culling of female deers due to heavily pregnant or looking after young that have just been born. So there'll be a lot of, you'll go out in the morning and try and pick up a few male deer, whether it's bucks, roebucks or red stags. They're the deer I've got in my current area. I would go out in the morning, which is nowadays when the sun comes up, you're looking at maybe 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Go out at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, see if I can go out stalking in the morning, pick up maybe a buck or a stag. And then in the afternoon, especially during the summer when you can't cull all the deer, I look to do a lot of my kind of forest management and maintenance work. So it's going out and using brush cutters and strimmers to make deer glades, open areas for deer to step out into, clearing paths, with tractor and flail, robo flails, things like that. So, and then on top of that, there's your obviously office admin during the summer, which is something it's a good time to keep up with it. As much as some of us maybe don't want to do it, the spring's definitely the time to do it. And then keeping on top of maintenance of your vehicles, your larders, making sure everything's up to standard as well.
You're laughing away, Nick. Do you reckon if we want to sell apprenticeships to younger generations, we should lean into the early mornings, getting out, going shooting, rather than the office-based work?
I would say so.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, though. It's just being able to paint a sort of real picture of what it looks like. And Nick, you're well acquainted with the amount of office work that is required to go into running a farm as well. Do you think that that's something that could be off-putting? Is there something that we can do, I suppose, from our perspective as policy people, as people involved in trying to get the politics of rural affairs right, that we can do to try to mitigate that?
I mean, I think there's lots of help out there. I think we're coming into farming from a kind of an adjacent farming background, but not ever having done it myself. Farm advisory service, there's lots of different aspects out there. I think the deer management side of things as well, I think that's a great aspect of the apprenticeship, is that you've got someone there to show you all of that admin, everything that you'll need to do, and having that laid out for you, and kind of being able to have that hands-on, asking questions in the moment, learning as you go. That's one of the huge benefits of that apprenticeship, is that you're never stranded on your own. You really get that sort of, your hand held through that training process, meaning that you're, ready to go at the end of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a really good point. Murray, you spoke about some of the kind of different bits and pieces that you were able to learn on the job. Is there anything that stands out to you as like the most valuable practical or personal skill that you've been able to pick up during your apprenticeship?
I mean, as I said before, going into the job, I had absolutely no experience in it whatsoever. It was just wanting to learn something new and trying something new. So as far as job skills to do with the actual job, it was more or less absolutely everything. I hadn't even handled a rifle beforehand. I didn't know anything about extracting deer to prevent contamination, grallicking deer, anything like that. So I actually owe that all to my mentor, who done all the hands-on training with me and kind of built me up to the wildlife ranger that I am today. I actually owe him a lot. But as far as life skills as well, it's definitely improved management skills, contract management, communication skills, being able to speak with everybody, how to bring myself across with what I'm saying and things like that. So it's obviously, as I said before, the job skills, I've learned absolutely everything, but it's life skills as well, definitely.
Yeah. And Nick, like looking at the rural sector more broadly, what kind of skills and opportunities are there out there for people to try to pick up beyond what we've just heard from Murray?
I think that's a really key point to just pick up from what Murray just said there. I think that where sort of schools do focus on driving kids into university, that's not the answer for everyone. And having that modern apprenticeship route gives you so much more than just being able to learn on the job and come out with a career at the end of it. Like Murray just said there, it's that life skill element of it. You're living your job every day, but you're also learning how to communicate, your management style, and it sort of gives you sort of that jump ahead almost, where you don't kind of miss those uni years where you might be, I don't know, no judgment, eating pot noodles, things like that. But I'm sure Murray ate a lot of venison through his apprenticeship. But at the same time, I think that expanded view on, that sort of jump into later life a little bit earlier gives you a kind of leg up almost. And I think it gives you those life skills, and that sets you up so well for the future. And that is just something that's really to be valued.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really fair point. There is so much more to it than just going out and getting a job and learning on the job. It does, as you say, Nick, it kind of gets you a few steps ahead in life, doesn't it? Murray, I wanted to ask, I know you've touched on a couple of points already, but throughout your apprenticeship, were there any standout moments for you, or sort of challenges that you were able to overcome that shaped your experience there?
I think from the very start, it kind of became clear to me that there were 6 apprentices in the wildlife ranger scheme that were initially kind of hired over Scotland, and it kind of became clear to me I was a bit of an outlier at the start, because I knew absolutely nothing, as I said before, whereas the other 5 had kind of previous experience, whether it was growing up on with their dad who had done something similar or something like that. So it was definitely at the start. I didn't want to feel like I was slacking behind, and I wanted to put in the kind of extra work to kind of catch up with everybody else from the start. So obviously done a lot of extra studying at the start, deer behaviour and things like that. And then I would definitely say as well, getting out, because the first kind of couple of weeks were, they were set to figuring out how to work things on the laptops and all the jobs you have to do. And then after that, it was getting out and going out for my first stalk with my mentor. And that was just a massive eye-opener for me, because obviously that's the first time I'd ever done anything like that. Beforehand, it was the closest I'd come to that was working on a farm, obviously. Yeah. So it was getting out for that first stalk and realising all the things you actually have to take into account to shoot a deer, because I think it's quite easy to assume that you can just kind of walk up to a deer and shoot it and that's it. That's definitely what I thought beforehand, because I didn't know anything. And the amount of deer that you see out in the field and things like that, you kind of get a preconceived idea that it's actually quite easy. But to actually go out and stalk deer, realise you have to take the wind into account, the weather, absolutely everything. Yeah, that was an eye opener for me. It was amazing.
So you mentioned like that transition from the classroom into actually getting out and about and doing the job. What did the balance look like between classroom learning and actually getting out and doing the on the job learning?
So the first couple of weeks was, as I said, it was kind of set to me working out the laptop system, which was it was quite in depth. So I had to spend quite a bit of time during my first weeks learning about that and learning about all the systems as far as holidays and things like that go. But then after that, obviously I had college work to do as well. But I spent the second week of the job at the college introducing myself with the people. They kind of ran through what the college system would be like, and then the rest of it was actually over. I didn't go to the college after that. It was all over a laptop, so it was an online course. So I would be able to get out almost every day, get out stalking every day, which is what I wanted to do, obviously. And then I would spend maybe a Friday afternoon once a week and just quickly upload all the photos that I'd taken from my college work onto the laptop, put them through, and so I would go out stalking Monday afternoon, Monday morning, and do that throughout the week until it came to Friday. Go out Friday morning, then spend Friday afternoon on the laptop, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was quite an easy balance actually, because I think it would be more difficult if I was having to travel to the college every day, but I was lucky enough not to do that, which was what I was wanting. Yeah.
Nic, I wanted to ask you about what your kind of perception of young people's understanding of what this might actually look like for them. So it's been great to hear exactly what that apprenticeship approach looked like for Murray. Do you think that people do understand what it looks like and what the opportunities are for apprenticeships at the moment?
I would say not enough. I think that sort of the value through school and education is very much that in going to university, and I don't think there's enough sort of benefit that's explained and outlined on what a modern apprenticeship does for you, what it can end up looking like. For example, with Murray, obviously the Forestry and Land Scotland, as Emma laid out earlier in the episode, it's really about that sort of being paid to train. You're learning, you're gaining all these skills, and then you come out of that qualified and ready to go. And I think throughout that, you've got those kind of built-in skills, the life skills, the experience, your colleagues, all of that. That's all happened. That's all created. And I think that's something that we don't put enough value on. And I think we could be looking at kids who want to, or career changers who want to, move into the land-based careers and the opportunities that come with that, and the fact that a modern apprenticeship is such a great way of doing it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. And there are lots of kind of points throughout the year where we do try to put an emphasis on these things. Like we just had the Border Union Education Day, where they got all the schools in the local area and the borders out to kind of see what opportunities there are in the rural sector. Things like that work really well. And then there's like celebrating success in the sector as well. We obviously have our own Helping It Happen awards, where we shine a spotlight on all the good things that are happening in rural Scotland. And then there's also the ALBA awards, aren't there, Murray? Because you are an ALBA award winner.
I am.
What was the category that you're the winner in?
So it was the Game and Wildlife Award, and then I got the sponsored award as well, the Tam Todd Trophy as well.
Superb. Yeah, it's a great fun evening. You were there this year, Nic, weren't you?
I was. It was great to see so many talented young people coming up through the sector, and just the talent, the passion, the energy. It was amazing. I think it's really valuable to outline both the young people coming through education and also those across the sector with our Helping It Happen awards, just to raise the awareness of how incredible the sector is.
Yeah, no, I think anything we can do to shine a spotlight on the people who are doing brilliant things there is always a good thing. Murray, you're out obviously now in a full-time role with FLS, and you made that transition from completing your apprenticeship into that role. How did your apprenticeship prepare you for transitioning into that role?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely massive. I remember thinking at the start of the apprenticeship, it was always a goal to get a job at the end of it. That was always what I was wanting to do. But I remember thinking at the start, with all the things, especially that first time I went out, as I said, I was blown away by how much you actually have to take into account. I remember thinking, God, I'm never going to be able to remember all this and do it by myself if my mentor's not next to me.
Yeah.
But then after a year and a half, 2 years of kind of just drilling it into me, you start just slowly. You start just feeling more confident in yourself to be able to do these things by yourself. And then, yeah, obviously managed to get out by myself. And then ever since then, it's just been absolutely flying. But the thought of kind of coming into this job, knowing as little as I did at the start, and not having the kind of learning process of learning on site, and the thought of kind of jumping into a full-time job straight away, I would have been absolutely clueless. The modern apprenticeship, it was massive. It helped me a lot.
Yeah, and looking back, ALBA award-winning work aside, what do you think helped you stand out to your employers now?
I think it was I was so eager to learn and so eager to impress the whole time that I made sure that everything I done, obviously, as you said, the ALBA Awards did help, but the likes of the college work, that would just be one example. I would always make sure that it was always done to a high standard. It was never running late. It was always on time, and I always like to be the first person to be able to hand my stuff in. Not that it was a competition, but it was as if to say, look, I'm really eager and I really want this job, so that if there was one job come the end of it, you couldn't give it to anybody but myself, because I was so eager to impress and so eager to learn the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So just be keen, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah,
that
is one thing I like reiterating as well. Obviously having came into the job knowing so little, it shouldn't put anybody else off from doing a job that you don't know anything about. You know what I mean? I came in knowing absolutely next to nothing, but as long as you're eager to learn, and you actually, as I say, you're confident in yourself and you want to do something with that subject, you can do absolutely anything.
Yeah, such a good message. How's your career progressed since you took up the full-time role?
Yeah, it's going well. It's been maybe a year since I've been full time myself now. So I spent the kind of, obviously I moved out of my mum's house into my own place, because the area that I'd done the apprenticeship, there wasn't a full time job available there. So I moved so it was from Newton Stewart to South Ayrshire is where I moved. So I've spent the kind of first year accommodating myself with the people up here, who I'm working with, the sites that I'm working on, just getting used to that kind of stuff. And then, going out and getting calls and things like that now. So I've developed as far as I'm able to fly a drone now as well. That's another development. That's definitely a big part of the deer sector coming up. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it. So it's flying drones to identify deer to help your stalking abilities. So I'm one of little people in Scotland who are doing a project called Drone Wilder now. So yeah, absolutely loving it.
Yes, it's an interesting kind of thread to pick up on there, Nic. Like the way apprenticeships are being approached now is obviously changing massively as we have these sort of technological advances, things that make our life easier in the sector. Do you think we'll see apprenticeship schemes changing to accommodate all of that?
Oh, 100%. I think we're having to future-proof, the people who are going to become our next generation of farmers, of deer stalkers, of game and wildlife management. All of these things are so important, but times are changing. We're using technology in different ways. We're looking at how we can streamline things, make things easier, more efficient. And I think being able to have those kind of minds that have gone through those training processes and just have a bit more insight into those programs to be able to sort of share that knowledge out and kind of bring the sector with it as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and Murray, looking back on the apprenticeship scheme, do you think there was an opportunity to incorporate more of this kind of stuff into it? Do you feel like you got enough of a good spread of skills and abilities that have allowed you to kind of progress your career faster, or do you think there was a few gaps there that could be filled?
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there were so many different opportunities of like training courses and things like that they would offer you throughout the process, and it was completely up to yourself whether you wanted to take these things on. Sure. Obviously, as I mentioned previously, doing the drone course with Drone Wild, that is a course that I chose to take on because it was something that I was kind of passionate about and I wanted to learn about. And it's become a massive part of my day in, day out job now. I use the drone almost every day that I'm going out, so I'm really glad that I did it.
Yeah. An obvious question to ask, Murray, just before we come to the last couple of questions, is do you have any advice for someone who is thinking about going into a modern apprenticeship?
Completely highly recommend it.
Correct answer. Well done.
As you can probably tell from what I've been saying, but no, I think it's, as I say, when I was growing up, I wanted to do a hands-on job. And for people who are in a similar situation to me that don't know what they're doing, but know what kind of person they are, know they like going out and being active, whether that's just going out and playing sports and things like that, and it's not a job like this that they can see themselves doing, it all does tie in. And, if you like being active and you like playing sports, there's every chance that you're not going to like sitting behind the computer when you're older, you know what I mean? So I would just say, be brave, just put yourself forward and just go for it, and if you don't like it, then you don't like it, and that's the worst that can happen. But you will get that opportunity one time where you do like it, as I've been lucky enough to enjoy this job, and you'll never look back, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And Nic, it's such a good message. Obviously, we can record a podcast and put it out there. What else can we do to amplify that kind of message?
I think it's definitely raising awareness of the availability of these opportunities for people. It's about sharing the stories. It's about getting that out there. I think that's so encouraging to hear, how passionate Murray is about modern apprenticeships and about his experience. And I think that's a great message, and that, you can try. And if you don't like it, there's lots of different opportunities. The best thing about Scotland is there's hundreds of land-based careers, and this is at your doorstep for you to kind of decide on what you want to do, and there's transferable skills that will flow between many different ones. So if you decided to do a modern apprenticeship on one topic, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't carry across a lot of those skills to something else, and you're not stuck in that if that's something that you liked and enjoyed but didn't want to do full time. And I think that's the benefit of this, is that you're learning skills that you can carry on with you. I think the value of transferable skills and being able to kind of adapt to something else is something that modern apprenticeships really offer, and it's really encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more with that, Nic. And it's, I suppose the onus is on us at SLE and everybody involved in the sector to keep getting that message out there. Just one last question for you, Murray, and that's what's coming next? What's the ambition for the next couple of years?
It's really, for me, just to keep developing my skills in the current area that I'm in. As I said, I'm trying to get used to the kind of ground that I'm on and get used to deer behaviour on that ground. So it's to get accustomed with that, and then just get out and do what I like doing, which is, shooting deer. And then see how the current projects that I'm doing develop, with the drone, see where it goes with that. I know there's so many opportunities of different technology now, thermal scopes and things like that. So I just want to see try different things out, see how deer management as a whole develops, and just develop my game with that sort of thing, if that makes sense. So just try out all the new equipment that comes out and kind of test everything out and just see what I like, and just try and develop me as a wildlife ranger as the time goes on, really.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I love the passion and enthusiasm you have for it, Murray. It's such a positive message. It makes me want to consider doing it. So, it's been really, really good to speak to you. I think the key message from both the people that we've heard from is that people here aren't short of ambition or enthusiasm. There's lots of opportunities. But if we do want rural businesses and public bodies like FLS and communities to keep delivering for Scotland on the economy, on the environment and socially, we need to make sure that the next generation can see a future for themselves in the sector. So it's great that we've got voices like Murray, like Emma, trying to get people into the sector and just demonstrate that apprenticeships are a really important part of making that happen. We've got no shortage of work to do in the rural sector. There's no shortage of challenges for us to meet, and certainly no shortages of opportunities for people willing to get involved in that. And clearly apprenticeships give people a route into the future. And they give our sector a better chance of building the skills that it needs to thrive. So thanks very much, Murray. Thanks, Emma. Thank you, Nic. And thank you at home for listening to Scotland Matters.